You know, chums, a few years ago, I was invited onto a TV show, one of these panel things, you know, and it was on, I think, ITV, the commercial channel that's now got no money, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I arrived at the station and there's all of that sort of thing, you know, where you're put into a room, and I think we're all separated because we all had to have different opinions. And what I remember was, and it's funny, isn't it, what you do remember, the wife of a famous TV personality had decided that she could change her opinion if the fee was going up. Oh yes, but forgetting of course that I could hear in the next room. You know, this is how television works. And everything was sort of going quite well until there was a pivotal point in that particular chat. And you always get these very young researchers coming in. I'm not decrying that, you know, they all have to start somewhere, but they all have an opinion and they tell you how it works and what they want. And you think, yes, you know, like I've done this before, you know. And then just before we're about to go to air, this particular thing happened. And I thought, wow, I've just read something very similar and I wanted to share it with you. As ever, let me explain. Morning chums, nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today in the very heart, of course, of a darkened Kensington today. Nice and brighter for a moment, and now it's gone all dark again. More storm clouds gathering, as I'm sure we'll all wonder. Anyway, listen, let me explain. Yeah, back to the TV show. You know, as I said, it was, I can't even remember, it was some sort of spin-off of one of those shows. And, you know, it wasn't the sort of thing that I would normally appear on. But at the time, I think I've told you this, I had an agent, and the agent was just useless, you know, and they couldn't get you any good work. But they said, oh no, if you go on this, you know, you'll meet XYZ and stuff. Hence the reason I now don't have an agent, manager, publicist. I just do it myself, and I feel that I've fared far better. You get the picture. But as I say, just before we got on to going live on the TV show, this guy came up and said, oh, by the way, could you just, you know, take your tie off? And I said, why? And he said, oh, well, and also if you could just appear in your, shirt, you know, no jacket, no tie. It's a very casual show. And I said, well, I wouldn't feel very comfortable doing that. You know, I said, it's, you know, I have a full-time job with a news channel. They expect a certain level of decorum and the image that they want you to be. Oh, no, we couldn't. Anyway, this went back and forth and I just refused. Appeared on the show, and it turned out that this sort of presenter ridiculed me throughout for being stuffy, stiff upper lip British, you know, the usual thing. It didn't last long, as you can imagine, chums. If I could find the tape, I'd love to play it to you. And it highlighted the fact that clearly people feel threatened by the way certain people dress. And this has happened this week. A Labour councillor up in North Lincolnshire has decried that actually, you know, none of the councillors or indeed people in Parliament now should wear shirt ties and jackets because it's offensive to the ethnic minorities. Right, this is Great Britain, the United Kingdom, right? Across the Commonwealth, across the world, it doesn't matter what position you're in. It's all about dressing politely, isn't it? Respectfully to people. But apparently, no, the ethnic minorities will be offended by the fact that I'm dressed in this level. Now, I could turn it around and say, I'm offended by somebody dressed as Casper the Ghost, or covered head to toe, literally with just some slits for the eyes. Yeah, it works both ways, right? This has truly escalated, and a fellow MP from the Reform UK party has now hit out upon this. But it just got me thinking that, you know, literally everybody wants to downplay it. There's a bigger story to this. You know, a lot of the industry, the tailormanship, you know, everything like that on those wonderful stores in Savile Row and Jermyn Street and stuff, that really will be very damaging to business. And most people now don't necessarily dress up. And I'm not saying you should. We all have our moments where we switch off, whether we just have, you know, as I said the other day, slippers and all that. It doesn't matter. But if you're going into a certain area of life, then you need to be respectful about how people look. That's just my opinion. And as I say, when you look at this MP, you think, yeah, right, scruffy Herbert, you know, so you basically want everybody to dress like you, so you feel comfortable. It's not about the ethnic minorities at all. They wouldn't care less. I've got friends who, you know, in various sort of parts of the world who've said, look, that's your tradition, we understand it. So what do you think? Should I not be presenting this in a shirt and tie? Or indeed, do you find it offensive like this alleged Lincolnshire MP does? And what's so wrong with having your own style, whether that be, you know, just nice summer attire, pale jackets, whatever. We all allowed to be individual. Why should we be told by one person, this is the look that we'll only accept? Love to know your thoughts as ever on this. Neil Sean, Kensington, London.